it's clear that the Trump era of American politics did not end when Joe Biden was elected. Multiple groups are still attempting to have the result of that election overturned, and there's every chance that Donald Trump will run again for office in 2024. Effectively, he owns the Republican Party. America is as divided as it's ever been. But is there any way to reduce that rift? As you may know, Mary Trump is his niece, also a psychologist. Her latest book is called The Reckoning, America's Trauma and Finding a Way to Heal. And she joins us now on News Talk. Good afternoon, Mary.
Hi, Sean. It's great to be here.
Thanks for taking our call today. Do you think that your uncle is really a symptom of a deeper malaise rather than it's all about him?
Absolutely. I think that is the best way to look at his appearance on the American political scene. This is somebody who represents a lot of what the Republican Party has stood for the last several decades, but it maybe hasn't been obvious to people who weren't paying very close attention. Somebody said to me recently that Donald Trump is somebody who's 250 years in the making, and I think that's exactly right.
Right. So the roots go back to the Civil War then?
They go all the way back. This is a country that was founded in white supremacy, and our white supremacy it's not only something we've never acknowledged or atoned for, it's something that still exists. I mean, you could say that white supremacy is one of the platforms of one of our two major Republican parties. The other problem that I don't think we think about enough is that no powerful men in our country have ever really been held accountable. And that does go back to the Civil War and Robert E. Lee, who was a Confederate general, who was a traitor to our country, and who really never suffered any consequences. I mean, there are monuments erected to him. There are universities named after him.
Okay, so it's a wound. Well, I suppose it's a wound that hasn't been addressed or healed, and at the moment it seems as if perhaps one part of America is saying we need to address this. We need perhaps to consider reparations or at least even to talk about it more openly, and the other part of America that just wants to say move on. That was the past. We're not racist. That was our great grandfathers, etc.
Yeah, and I think in order to be able to say that, you need to ignore not just American history, but America for the last 40 years. It's quite something to see what people on the right are doing vis-a-vis what's called critical race theory, which is really a legal theory. And it's not taught in public school. It's not taught in kindergarten or even high school and even college. And basically their argument is that somehow addressing racism in America is anti-American and unpatriotic, which is absurd. By ignoring the problem, it's only going to get worse, which it has.
Yeah. But, maybe for understandable reasons, they don't want to address that problem because they feel threatened by it.
Of course. And what's sort of fascinating about that approach is by ignoring it and not owning at least some responsibility, because the white majority is responsible for perpetuating a lot of these things, then you do become responsible for it by letting it spread as long as it's unaddressed. So it's a strategy that will backfire in the long run, but in the short run, it's just dividing us further, and it's stoking up all sorts of rage, and it's making us harder to focus on the matter at hand, which right now is dealing with COVID in a way that should really be uniting us. But again, we're so divided and there's so much chaos. And that I do lay at Donald's feet. He's very good at stoking division and chaos.
And he, well, I suppose, did he specifically make it a political, or, things like mask wearing, did he specifically make that a political issue, or, did he sense the tide and think, here's another thing that I and my cohort can light upon?
Oh, no, that's all him. Think about it this way. What other leader would ever have thought, okay, the science is saying masks will save people, social distancing will save people, but let's lie about it and pretend that wearing masks is a political decision and that only liberals wear masks, for example. I don't think it would have occurred to anybody, Democratic or Republican, to go that route because it was so dangerous. And let's face it, hundreds of thousands of Americans are dead today who would not otherwise have been if Donald had just acted like a compassionate, empathetic person who cared, which of course he's not.
Yeah. Is he capable of pretending to be that person?
Not convincingly, unfortunately. And I think we've seen that, I mean, we see it at his rallies. He's actually holding a rally, I think this weekend in Alabama. Alabama has no beds left in their intensive care units because of the huge surge in COVID cases. Only 35% of people in Alabama are vaccinated, and Donald's going there to hold yet another super spreader event, which essentially requires people to take their lives into their hands, So that's what he thrives on, unfortunately.
So why is it, Mary, that they have these events and black, he can say something and say black is white, and the people going to those events and people who voted for him will go, yes, you're right, Donald, black is white?
I wish I could make sense of it. There is something very cult-like about the people around him and the people who follow him. And I think one thing that's important to do that I didn't do for a really long time is to stop acting like they're seeing something good in him that we just can't see, right? There isn't. What they are identifying with is his weakness. They identify with his being able to get away with everything. I think they love that about him. They love how he pushes the envelope and doubles down even when he's wrong. And they, I think, also love the fact that he is an inveterate failure who keeps being allowed to succeed.
I've never heard it put that way before. But it does seem, or strikes me, that his supporters do, at the very least, love the fact that he's pushing against something, which would imply that cohort of people, pretty much half of the United States, have felt something was pressing on them that they objected to, and that's been going on for quite some time.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. One thing Donald does better than anybody I know is focus on grievance. He is so aggrieved, and they are so aggrieved. And I think part of it for them is that they do feel threatened demographically. White Americans are soon to be a minority of people in this country. And, with being white in America comes a lot of privilege that's not extended to any other races. And they feel that they will lose that privilege if they are no longer in the majority, which is probably true, as it should be. Everybody should be equal. But they're terrified. And that's what the Republican Party also does very well. They keep their people afraid, whether it's Mexicans coming across the border or Black Americans protesting for their civil rights, and they turn that fear into anger. And that's where Donald comes in. And he's quite expert at it, I have to say.
Is the grievance just based on race politics? Do you think one could perhaps make an argument that the Democratic Party abandoned or seemed to abandon a lot of working class voters, people in middle America who saw traditional industries they worked in disintegrate and had the perception that the Democrats were really only cared about the coastal elites and identity politics?
I honestly think that that's a political strategy that's been used on the right, because if you think about it, when we talk about the working class in America, most people really mean the white working class in America. So in the 2016 election, it was called economic anxiety. The white working class were because of their economic anxiety, they were supporting Donald. But Black working class people weren't supporting him. You know, so even though all working class people should be united, right, because they all have the same issues, whether it's unions or making a living wage or health care, that too is divided along racial lines. So again, I think this is just something that the Republican Party has manufactured over the last 40 years.